push his mother off the balcony of a home. And what would cause a father to take the life of a daughter because she's become too westernized. So things that, we deal with we have domestic problems all the time in families. We have dysfunctional American families, but we don't have in the back of people's mind. So the teenage boy was encouraged by the father, who was in a divorce proceeding with the mother. The mother was Sharia. Well, the mother was, let's say, a little too Americanized for the family. And the father and mother were divorcing, and they were both about to take depositions. And somehow the teenage son, 15, was tutored or mentored by the father and possibly the imam. There's some evidence there that she was dishonoring the family because she was about to depose in a divorce case, which is normal American behavior, but not Sharia behavior. And eventually, this 15-year-old is alleged to have pushed his mother off the balcony, and she died. Well, that's not a crime in Sharia. That's an honor action to reestablish the honor. Of course, in America, that's cold-blooded murder, and that's the example that we have with many other examples as well. So this whole complex, I think that was a good word, confusing situation where we have not just non-assimilating in terms of smiling or being nice to neighbors, but just being ruled by overpowering ideology implemented by the imam in the neighborhood mosque. The rest of the story is nobody has any visibility what the heck happens in these mosques. So we have 140 of them, and we don't know anything about what's going on in them except the evidence that we see when a crime is committed, like an honor killing.
Farah?
Well, it's absolutely true. This is the 15-year-old. Imagine being raised in Sharia. Imagine being raised to believe that it is your job as a male to keep the honor of the family together. This woman is outrageous to pass away. To file a divorce in American courts from her Muslim husband, that was one heck of a woman. Let me tell you, he lost a gem. She's not just dishonoring the Muslim family. She's dishonoring her entire community, and they can't let her get away with that. This is like the mafia. If she got away with that, what kind of message is this sending to the rest of the Muslim women in the community? What do you think other Muslim women who just thought about getting a divorce from their husbands would think now? I can't even trust my child. How am I ever going to get out? Imagine how many messages this sent to the rest of the Muslim women in that community and in communities all around the United States. You can't even trust your kids when you want to get out from under Islam. This is the kind of influence. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, the interesting story is, I mean, this is a terrible drama, but there are two daughters in the family, younger than they're teenagers. They're 12, I think, 13-year-olds in the same family. The brother killed the mother. The young daughters are in the family, and obviously, to make Farah's point, what is the lesson for them? And then the rest of the question is, just like the FGM case in Michigan, which is, why would it have taken all this time for FGM to be going on under the radar? We finally got a federal prosecution, fortunately, but all of the unspoken, unreported crimes because of the tight-knit Sharia community, and also because of the lack of not the lack of interest, the concern of the non-Muslim world to deal with anything that might imply that they are being offensive or creating oppression or fitna to the Muslim world. In other words, there's a reluctance amongst law enforcement to prosecute crimes. And so all these years we've had FGM going on. Now we understand that there's hundreds of cases. People have traveled into Michigan. So how could the Michigan medical community have institutionalized FGM all these years without having the evidence come out? Now we have one case and people are paying attention to it. And there's implications that other doctors were associated with the woman who was indicted. And now the parents of the children that were brought from Minnesota into Michigan for this practice, now the parents have been indicted. But what's the point here is, as you pull back the evidence, you'll find that the medical community in Michigan is so heavily Middle Eastern, so heavily Sharia compliant, that the medical doctors in Michigan for the last 20 and 30 years who came from the Middle East, who are Sharia compliant, are involved in all kind of economic development. And they're not just medical doctors. They own buildings. They're part of local organizations, economic development commissions. They're identified by the governor to be on these commissions. These are medical doctors that have made a beachhead in Michigan. They have sons and daughters who have gone to medical school, and these are the same people that are in leadership positions in the mosques in Michigan. So this whole closed society where FGM can happen and nobody knows about it, and where these other Sharia-oriented crimes can occur. I mean, I'll give you an example here. The classic example of the medical community in Michigan would be two people. One is running for the governorship of Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed, a medical doctor. But the other one is another medical doctor who is an officer, has been the president of CARE Michigan, and is currently an officer in CARE Michigan, Muslim Brotherhood. That doctor, a medical doctor, has a daughter. The daughter is a doctor. The daughter wears a hijab. The daughter is married to the man running for governor. So, I mean, the power of the medical community, again, these are not factory workers from Somalia like they have in Minnesota. These are heavily educated people trained in the medical profession, originally coming here 30, 40, 50 years ago. Multiple generations, but these are Sharia-compliant people who have infiltrated Michigan to the point where we have a candidate for governor who's Sharia-compliant and a doctor, and we have an FGM industry that nobody's done anything about and it's been going on for a long, long time, and we're just beginning to find out about it. So this is part of the 1,400-year plan. It's extremely effective, and again, sadly, but importantly, the rest of the country can look at what's going on here and think of the canary in the coal mine and figure out whether or not they want to get prepared and whether or not they want to get police trained to go after Sharia crime.
FGM, female genital mutilation, and Dick was referring to a Muslim gentleman that is planning on running for governor of the state of Michigan and probably has a pretty good likelihood of getting married. And I have a question, Dick, that I'd like to see if you could get answered from that governor-to-be, if you will. And I got the same question for Farah and for Dick when we come back about what it is that we can do from an American standpoint and maybe from a Muslim standpoint. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call, WTVOradio.com. I apologize to our YouTube listeners. We had an operator error, yours truly. I didn't turn it on. Oh, it's been a long night. We'll be back in a jiff. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call.
Keep an eye on each other here.
Yeah. It ain't working.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
We had an operator error.
Take back our dignity. Let every voice ring free, 'cause you know if we don't watch out.
And we are back, B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. We had two special guests this morning, Dick Manasseri and Farah Prudence, and we've been talking about Islam, and that was an interesting insight that you had. Both Dick brought it up, and then Farah finished it about Muslims acting different and feeling different about themselves as versus being in the homeland, more security, and being in America, less secure. I think that was a very great point that was brought up and something we need to take into consideration. The question on Dick, I'm going to say this first. I write my congressman on a daily basis, and one of my congressmen and senators on a daily basis. One of my senators was bragging about how friendly he was to sexual deviants and how important it was that we be inclusive of all Ohioans. And I wrote him back and said, well, when you include homosexuals, sexual deviants, then you automatically exclude two groups of people. One of the families, the natural families, and two are Christians. And I wrote him back and forth. The last letter I wrote him, I basically said, okay, this is what I think you think. And unless I hear in other words, I think that you are harassing and discriminating against Christians. And unless I hear back from you, unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to assume that to be the truth. You've got a gentleman running for governor of Michigan, and I'd love to get him on record what he thinks about female genital mutilation. What do you think, Dick?
Well, I think we can. I think we can guess that as a Sharia-compliant person, he would want that practice to continue. He might. By the way, I have to say he is extremely polished, and we've used the expression that, like Barack Obama, he's come out of nowhere. Like Barack Obama, he says all of the victim words. He's very much for a general, government-provided health care. He's concerned about Black Lives Matters. He and other people like Linda Sarsour, who support him, are all concerned about all the other victims in America. So this whole notion about, by the way, Farah mentioned that people in the Middle East hear that the West is a problem. Well, of course, people in the West, in Michigan and other parts of the country, hear that the West, meaning the federal government, the U.S. Constitution, the Christian heritage, is the problem, and that we're an unfair, hateful, white supremacist group. I don't think Abdul is going to come out and say that there's white supremacists is the problem, except he is for sanctuary cities. He is for welcoming Michigan, which is, in fact, focused on this whole notion about victimization, the people that are oppressed in America. So I probably left your question a few minutes ago, but I just wanted to make the point. He is a viable candidate. He has raised over $1 million. And one last thing to tie it back to the medical community, if you look at the donors, and that's what we do, we have a list of his donors, you will see a massive majority of his donors are from around America. They're in the medical profession, and their last names indicate that they likely have some Middle Eastern heritage and could be and probably are Sharia compliant. So this whole notion that the ISNA Convention was asked to send money to Abdul so he could become the governor of Michigan is actually playing out. We have evidence by looking at the donations. He's raised over $1 million, and we can see the individual donors. So it is a real part of the program. It's a real part of the notion of moving America into a sanctuary state, which is what he's favoring for Michigan. If you have a sanctuary state, then you don't enforce the laws, and you're kind of outside of the Constitution. What the heck? Why would Sharia be okay? So I think the notion that this gentleman is another Obama makes a lot of sense, and again, the whole country should pay attention to this candidate.
First New York, then California, and now Michigan. There ain't going to be anything left of the United States.
Well, you got to ask yourself the question: if you have Alabama with a new candidate for the Senate on the Republican side, if you have Alabama with training of sheriff's departments, again, I sat in a sheriff's office. I sat with 60 officers in a county in Alabama. I was trained. If you have that dichotomy between a place that is constitutional, that is Judeo-Christian, that is training law enforcement, that is aware of Sharia crime, that's called a state called Alabama. Then you have another state where you have Democratic Socialists of America. The two senators in Michigan were supported by the hard left, the Democratic Socialists of America. You have a candidate for governor who is Sharia compliant. You have two different views of states in the United States. And so it begs the question, will they continue to be United States or what? I mean, how do you go in the direction that Michigan's going versus the direction that a place like Alabama is going?
Yeah, you've got two opposite ends of the spectrum. That's a great point, Dick. And one of the things that I had meant, by the way, do you have contact information for folks that like to maybe contribute or possibly even help you?
Well, again, I would encourage people to Google Sharia Crime Stoppers. They'll find a number of sites that have picked up on that. One of them is United West. Of course, the other one is securemichigan.org. And if there's any organization out there, by the way, let's go back to just one other thing that you said, which I think is important. You write to your congressman. Well, I think that's a good thing to do, but some of people think that the politicians have already demonstrated their level of not being representative of the grassroots. That there's a potential corruption on the part of major interests, whether it's cheap labor, Chamber of Commerce, or other people throwing money at politicians. So we would invite people to think about local law enforcement, and if they have an interest in what Sharia Crime Stoppers is delivering, which is training for law enforcement, the training that I referred to, they can also send an email to, I'll just give you an email reference, spearpoint911@gmail. So spearpoint911@gmail.com if they're interested in learning more about Sharia Crime Stoppers and the training that their law enforcement probably needs and probably hasn't had.
SPEAR point, one word, Spear Point?
Yeah, SPEAR point, one word, 911, all one phrase, at gmail.com. What that does is connect an individual person. Again, this is intentionally low-key. I'll use the word under the radar because, to be honest, if you try to get law enforcement trained in a place like Michigan and you make a big deal out of it, you will be in trouble with the Southern Poverty Law Center, which some of us already are. Mm-hmm. You'll be in trouble with CARE Michigan. You'll be in trouble with the left. There are people who just do not want anybody to deal with what we're talking about. They don't want to deal with specifically using the word terror, Sharia, jihad, etc. They don't want that. And so there's an aggressive backlash, anti-Muslim hate group attack. So this is the reason we're doing things the way we're doing them is we want to provide the training. We don't need to be harassed. We don't want police departments harassed. If they want the training, they can get it. It is basically there's no cost to the training. There's travel expenses, and that's it. The reason we're doing this is basically because there's no reason for people who don't live in Alabama. There's no reason for people in Michigan to be less safe than the people in Alabama who get the training.
Got it. If you go to North Korea and you're to interview a North Korean, they would tell you how bad America is and how bad Americans are. Sounds an awful lot like what's going on in the Middle East. Farah, how do we handle this as Americans? How do we talk to Muslims? How do we approach them? Are they approachable? Can we do anything with the Muslims that are currently
Everybody's approachable.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. The Muslims live in a world of darkness. Isolation is one of the key things that Muhammad, their prophet, did. He made sure he covered all of his bases. Not only do they feel like they can only trust each other, but they think and they believe in the core of them that we are their enemies, we're out to get them, and when they're not looking, we're going to kill them unless they strike first. But one of the things that I wanted to point out real quick is that Dick said that the 15-year-old boy had two sisters. There's another point of why he probably did that. The belief that if the mother divorces the father, then of course she's seen as a whore, literally. And nobody's going to marry the daughters because of the sin of the mother. So now you have a father and a brother that are worried about the marriage of these daughters. And marriage, if their daughters are married, that's complete dishonor to the entire family. And again, it is because of the isolation. They feel like their only choice is to bring honor to the family by saying, well, our little tarnish on the family is gone. She's dead. This is how we deal with it. So, of course, our daughters are going to be honorable. But he talks about the only way to fight darkness is with light. Mm-hmm. And unless we, as Christians and Jews, start to speak truth instead of handling Muslims with kid gloves full of lies and all this quote-unquote interfaith communication, there is no communication if we're not speaking the truth that we know to be valid. You are wrong. What you're living is wrong. It is deceit. It is evil. That is not the truth. I don't need to handle Muslims with kid gloves. I can tell them the truth, and it is okay to hurt their feelings. Hurting somebody's feelings is not the same as harming them. We're all adults, and we can talk about this. It is not okay. It's not loving them to not tell them the truth. You're playing Russian roulette with them, with the salvation of their souls, and with the safety of our nation by continuing this narrative of we all serve the same God, and what they're doing is okay for them because it's their culture. American Muslim children have the same rights as other children. American Muslim women have the right to feel safe, to be able to leave their abusive families, to get shelter. They have the right to pursue happiness. By turning a blind eye, we're saying, no, you don't have that right. You are, in fact, a second-class citizen. Our allegiance is to non-Muslim women. We need to make them feel safe. We need to provide them with options for the women and for their children to leave. Empower the women, and you will break the Islamic hold on these communities. Empower the women. Get them out. Don't turn a blind eye. Make sure that the church is working and being the hands and the feet of Christ, telling them that it's not true, empowering them by telling them the truth and by giving them options. That's how you do it.
Farah Prudence.
BJ, let me
Go ahead, Dick.
Yeah, BJ, I just want to say we had an opportunity to visit with Farah because of you. Mm-hmm. And this is the most important thing that Farah said during that interview. And I think she just repeated it beautifully. We are hurting the women and the children in Muslim families who could be empowered. These are free people. They're in America. They're free. When the Western social justice churches look the other way and talk about interfaith, they're condemning these women to hell on earth and these children. And I just thought I had never heard it presented that well months ago, and I've not heard it presented that well since. So, Farah, this is really, really important. We are failing these people by accepting the barbaric lies they live in America.
Yes.
There's criminal behavior. So one of the ways that we speak truth is to knock on the door of the police department and ask them if they've been trained. Do they understand the hell that people live under in Sharia, when the door's closed, at home, in their neighborhood? As policemen, are they trained to look for honor violence? Are they trained to look for FGM? Are they trained to look for child marriages? And if they're not, then we want them to be trained because we're citizens and we want to be safe. We're not safe, by the way, if we live across the street from a home where these crimes are committed.
Caller, mute yourself, please. We got a caller coming in. This is B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WTVOradio.com. We're going to do a running break here. We normally take a break at 15 after. Just tell you it's B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. Last call, and we're talking to Dick Manasseri and Farah Prudence. And we have a caller on the line, Yvette, and I think she might have a question or maybe a comment for Dick and or Farah. Yvette?
Yes.
You are on.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
You're on the stage. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I only have just a comment listening to Farah when she says that we need to empower the women. We need to empower the women of the Muslim community, and yet we have the American women who are in support of the Islam religion and Sharia-compliant individuals coming into the United States. And some of these American women are sitting on our city councils and in our universities that are working with Welcoming Michigan here. So we have a double-edged sword that are involving the women in the state.
Right.
And so my question is, how do we combat that? Because, I mean, I spoke with one of them last night, and she's in full support of, she sits on the Alma City Council, and she's in full support of Welcoming Michigan. in bringing those people here. And she stated last night that you can't just throw a one blanket statement on all of those people and say they're all bad when they all can't be bad. So she doesn't see any problem with bringing them here.
Right. Thank you, Yvette. Listen, it's not that they're all bad. It's very important to, when we're speaking to liberals, and this is what I have found personally, and we're speaking to people with that mentality, to say they're not all bad. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is they all believe the same thing. If you want to say it's bad, that's your word that you threw out there. What we're saying is that everybody who believes in Islam is a Muslim, and in order to be a Muslim, you need to believe in Islam. Islam is Sharia law, and Sharia law is Islam. These are people that believe in this, and that is a blanket statement because that's actually okay to say. Everybody that believes in Christ is a Christian. Everybody that believes in Islam is a Muslim. You can't be a Muslim if you don't believe in Islam, and if you don't believe in the inferiority of the women. Half of the vote, less mind and less smart, and less religion and less faith. These are all things that are 100% Islamic. What we want to do is focus the narrative on how do we save these women and these children, not on whether they're bad or good. How do we save them when they're coming in here? There are talks, and I'm 100% certain, the immigrants that are coming in here, some of them are coming in with child wives. How do we save these girls? How do we get them out? Because we cannot accept that standard. We cannot have that blood on our hands. We cannot have that tarnish on the American flag. Everybody talks about these people are bad. It's not a matter of whether they're bad or good. It's a matter of if they come here with this kind of mindset, how are we going to combat it? How are we going to save these people? And sometimes it's not going to work.
Right. And I guess I would also make the comment that we have a responsibility to our families. Ooh. So the natural family is part of the whole conversation. We have a responsibility for the families that we have under our responsibility. So we need to be careful that we don't bring people in that will endanger any of our family. And if we, in addition, if they're here and we can reach out to them and not leave them in an enslaved state, that's a double win. But to go back to the question specifically from Yvette, I think we have to remember that there are women who are so committed to multiculturalism, to the left's agenda, to their individual freedom, whether it has to do with freedom of choice, gender identity, Black Lives Matters, that for them, this is just one more issue. This is one more issue of victim support. This is one more issue of the global left, which wants to basically, is comfortable destabilizing America. It's not just the people in the Middle East that think the West is the evil part. There are American citizens, particularly at universities, women, who have seen in their own movement to their own complete 100% feminism, that they're not assimilated to the Western Judeo-Christian environment. They don't want to hear about good and evil, so everything is normal. So for women to march with Linda Sarsour in a women's movement, to absorb what she is saying, she's in a hijab, she's promoting Sharia compliance, and she's a woman's movement leader? Well, that just shows you that there's an aversion to the distinction between good and evil, and anybody that's a victim, we need to take care of. Oh, by the way, that furthers our agenda to change America. To change America how? To destabilize it and make stronger government be the only answer. Oh, by the way, that's called the global leftist movement. It happens to match up with the 1400-year Islamic movement. So you know what? I'm a woman. I'm a university professor. And I'm going to use that phrase, which was used directly to us, Yvette, as you remember. How can you say all Muslims are bad? And, of course, we never said that.
Right.
Hate, it doesn't take much thought to hate. And for, I'll use the term a feminist, to embrace Islam. It's just, I mean, it's an oxymoron maximum, but it just fascinates me that there is so much hate, and I think it's hate for the truth. It's hate for the biblical standards, I think, is what we're really talking about, because everything that is opposing, everything that's trying to change, is trying to change from absolutes right and wrong. It's trying to change from natural to unnatural. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, everything is normal. If everything is normal, the new normal is women in hijabs walking around, which if that brings damage to uncovered women who are now targets for rape, well, that's just too bad. It's just the new normal. If the new normal is that Nike now has a line of athletic gear, including the hijab, well, that's just normal. I mean, the whole notion that people can be so selfish about their own, they don't want to have right and wrong in their lives. They want everything to be normal, everything. And therefore, they'll jeopardize, they will avoid the notion of evil, even if that jeopardizes women who might live in slavery, or a woman who might be thrown off a balcony. It's okay as long as I get my non-judgmental life. It's okay. Right. And so women are basically ignoring other women.
Right. Yep. And the question that I ask my representatives when I speak to them is, it's very simple. Tell me how many rapes are okay as a price to pay for your multiculturalism. Tell me. And for your white guilt and for your left-wing globalist agenda. Give me the number. What's the number? How many rapes are acceptable? How many honor killings are acceptable? How many, how many girls undergoing FGM is acceptable to you? How many child brides are acceptable to you? Give me the number. How much am I supposed to tolerate? Because I'd like to know the number. And whose child is it? Whose child is it that's going to get raped? Is it your daughters that are going to get raped? Who are we sacrificing at the altar of Islam? Who are we putting up, other than our unborn children that are getting slaughtered in ridiculous numbers? Whose daughter is going to get raped so that you can feel better about yourself in your twisted mind?
Right. That's a great question. I've asked a lot of people that same thing, and they don't know how to answer.
Go ahead. Good. Do you have any other questions or comments, Yvette?
Yes. Mm-hmm. One other thing is, I don't know if you guys know about this, but there has been some information that has come across about our House Speaker, Tom Leonard,
Michigan,
who has,
okay, go ahead.
Who has employed a DACA individual back in 2016. And the thought process is it's okay to employ or allow undocumented individuals in our Lansing capital for internships and or employment. And it's not the business of the people to know what is happening in Michigan capital.
Very convenient.
So, I mean, yeah. So I just wanted to let you guys know that as well, as part of the discussion that we're having, that they are for bringing these individuals in and allowing them in our government.
Thank you, Yvette. I think we got another caller coming in. But before we take it, any comments? And by the way, Farah, it's no fair thinking and asking for specifics. That's not plain fair. Okay.
Right. So, don't ask about the facts.
Right. What does this look like? Go ahead.
Dick brought up Sayed, who's running in Michigan. I actually looked into him. He has immense heavy ties with the Muslim Brotherhood. So does his wife. Immense. The ties that he brings into the Muslim Brotherhood are absolutely dangerous. And this is what happens. This is what creates, we were talking about how do things go unnoticed in our own backyard. Well, here I am, a little Muslim girl. I'm 8 years old. My parents are taking me to get FGM done. The taxi driver who takes us there is a Muslim. The doctor is a Muslim. The police officer is a Muslim. The imam is the person that I can go to. Guess what? He believes in FGM too. I am completely isolated and I am completely sealed. And even if I wanted to go talk to my neighbor or to my teacher, if they just so happen not to be Muslims, well, they're Muslim sympathizers. And they're going to go and tell my parents, and there goes my head.
Wow. Wow. Hey, we got a caller. Caller, do you have a question or a comment for Dick or for Farah or both?
Well, I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, and who are we speaking with? Who are we speaking with, please?
It's Silver. This is Silver.
Okay.
This is Joseph.
All right, Silver. Go ahead, please.
Until we recognize that this is spiritual warfare, that Islam has no business being here in this Christian Judaic nation, we're going to lose. Period. I mean, all these other things that we talk about, the women's rights and all this other kind of stuff, is crap. Until we get them out of here and this law out of this nation, we have to recognize this is religious warfare, okay?
Spiritual.
And and it's got to extend to like what, unfortunately, like the Crusades did, that kind of thing. We have to physically get them out of here and get that law out of here. Now, if the leftists are going that way with it, okay, get them out of here, all right? Give them the opportunity to accept Christ and to live according to his ways, the way he has set forth, and get rid of Muhammad, okay, because that's the whole nature of the whole scheme of things in this world today. It's simple. That's all I. Oh yeah. By the way, monitor your YouTube live chats.
Okay. I can't pick them up. Are we not picking them up, Mr. Anderson? For some reason, we're not getting them.
Yeah, I've had trouble getting logged on. We're running heavy on our bandwidth here, and it's hard for us to run all these machines.
Okay, that's cool.
All right.
That's cool.
All
right, but that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back from the break, let's address the religious issue. Let's address the Christian church issue. And what are we seeing? And from Joseph, you can tell what he expects. And I'll leave you with this: where the Spirit of the Lord is, there you find liberty. And we're not talking about Allah. We're not talking about Muhammad. We're talking about Lord Jesus Christ. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. SaintsStream, WTVOradio.com.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life on WTVOradio.com.
Well, you talk about compute. By the way, this is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. We have two special guests today, Farah Prudence and Dick Manasseri. And Farah and Dick, we are so appear to be so confused. I know when you talk about the Christian church, you could be talking about 38,000 different denominations, 38,000 different ways of dividing. And how can we ever expect to win? I understand that if it gets bad enough, everybody's going to drop their personal preferences and try to go to battle, which may be too late. How do we overcome this? How do we get from point A to point B and get the church engaged? I don't even know how to begin I don't know whether it's fair to ask the question, how do we get them united? And in some cases, the church is our own worst enemy. Dick?
Christians these days, and you've heard me, I think you've heard me say it before, BJ. I became a Christian after a while. It's not like I left Islam to become a Christian. But one of the things from the outside looking in, when I wasn't a Christian, I was looking in, I was like, these people can't even agree on anything. They can't even agree to disagree. How do these people even know what's up and what's down? The church is so divided, and they're so busy pointing fingers at each other, well, if you don't believe that the rapture is a literal rapture, then you're a heretic. I'm like, okay. I really doubt that once you go up to those pearly gates, and it's kind of like morbidly funny. When you go up to those pearly gates, I don't believe Christ is going to say, do you believe my mother Mary consummated her marriage to Joseph and had children? If you say no, he's going to be like, nope, Peter, close up those gates. They're not getting in. I don't think that's what's going to break the camel's back. I think it's going to be, did you believe in me? Did you believe that I was your Lord and Savior? Hey, I recognize you. You've prayed to me. You've done my work. You have a relationship with me. Come on in. You didn't pick on your brothers and sisters. You fought the real enemy. Come on in. I don't think the rapture is going to break the camel's back. I don't think it's whether or not you believe there's a literal hell. And until Christians, all of Christians, the entire kingdom of God comes together and starts to fight the common enemy rather than fighting within each other like squabbling little idiots, and pardon my language, we don't stand a chance. And it's the church's
I agree
failure.
with you, Sarah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the church is, we're encouraged to think about politicians, pastors, and police. And the reason we focused on police as Sharia Crime Stoppers is look at the failure of politicians to deal with this issue. And if you look at pastors, I want to congratulate the biblically trained pastors that I've gotten to know. They are courageous. They have courage. We are being hosted this Thursday, for example, at the Baptist Church in Bloomfield Hills on what women should know about Sharia. But that particular pastor is an exception. We have a large number of pastors that are either afraid to speak up and to live out their commitment to the faith. And on the other hand, I think we have to be very blunt. We have a massive, enormous congregation led by the Pope in Rome, who is aggressively in favor of massive immigration, who is insulting anybody who would believe in private property. I mean, the Pope has basically said that again this week. So we have, on the one hand, a massive worldwide organization. By the way, I've said it before, in Michigan, the Catholic Church is so powerful, that's another reason why Abdul has a very good chance of winning. The Pope has the same positions on sanctuary state that the candidate for governor, Abdul El-Sayed, a Sharia-compliant candidate. They are identical. The Catholic Church in the country is a major part of supporting illegal immigration and legal immigration in massive numbers, and of course they are part of the industry that gets paid to do that. So you have wrong-headed, I will put it that way, Christians in large numbers on the wrong side of the issue, and you have our allies include biblically trained people who focus on good and evil, who focus on the word of Jesus, and are not wrapped around political structures, political divisions that have separated parts of Christianity. So I think the church is a big part of the problem. And my own comment back to the gentleman who called in is, I understand what he's saying, but America is not a theocracy. We are on Judeo-Christian principles. We have a constitution which reflects that. We have state laws. So if we focus on the Constitution and state laws and its enforcement, that's, in my opinion, the best chance we have to move the ball forward and to remain a Judeo-Christian country. If the laws are violated, if the Constitution is stepped on over and over and over, the Judeo-Christian basis that we live under is gone. And then it's just a function of who's stronger, who's more forceful, which group has the bigger weapons, and sadly, and which group is more organized. Sadly, Islam and large portions of Christianity are on the wrong side of this issue, and they're organized. Unless we depend on the Constitution and law enforcement, I'm concerned that we're going to lose.
By the way, we had a wonderful debate a couple 3 weeks ago on the Constitution, whether it was Christian or whether we should get rid of it or not. And I encourage all of our callers to go to our site, naturalfamilyfoundation.org, and go to radio and get into that archive. And I say that because, Dick, you seem to be making assumptive. People say that the Constitution is a human instrument, that it's not really God. But the power that we get for the Constitution, according to the Declaration, does come from God. And the Constitution is there, in large part, to limit man's ability to assume all that power in one place and basically destroy mankind. What bothers me is what doesn't bother other people. And I've talked to folks, doesn't it bother you? And I'm talking about my personal Christianity, whether I believe in baptism or whether I believe that when you go to heaven, if you don't have that USDA time, date, and stamp, you know, the date, the hour, the month, the year that you accepted Jesus Christ, your personal Savior, if you don't have that tattooed to you, you're not going to heaven. And all the other things that we can argue about. But come on, we all have a sense of right and wrong.
Exactly.
It's kind of, the manufacturer kind of put it into all of us. We know the difference between right and wrong. And you don't even have to be a Christian to let these things bother you. You don't have to be a Christian to try to do something about them. But for the most part, right, Christians who should know better just stand by and let these things happen. And I don't understand, if you're a Christian, if you're a human, why doesn't this bother you? Why doesn't female mutilation bother you? Why doesn't treating women like slaves bother you? And we talked about divorce, and we have a nice conversation about that. But divorce when you talk about the natural family, the way it's designed, it's a lifetime warranty. Okay, it's not supposed to be take the car out and bring it back 6 months later because you just don't like the way it runs. Hey, you get the car, you're stuck with it for life, or you're blessed with it for life, however you want to look at it from your personal standpoint. But there's so many issues that the pill gave sexual license. I think the pill was one of the worst things that ever happened to the world. It gave sexual license. And I can remember when I was running around in my youth, how joyous it was that the pill was out there. I'm going, oh my goodness, I'm in heaven. I didn't realize what heaven really was at the time, if you know what I mean. But there's so many things that don't bother people that they don't seem to be getting irritated about it, or they don't have an itch that needs to be scratched. That's the thing that drives me crazy. I'd mentioned early on in the program about how selfish you two were, and others like myself that just try to do everything ourselves. And it's not because we don't think other people can't help us. Other people aren't coming alongside of us for the most part to help us. And I don't understand that. And again, you don't have to be a Christian to know the difference between right and wrong. What is keeping you from coming along beside it? Yes, it is a spiritual war. And yes, prayer is important. But prayer without works is dead. He put us here on planet Earth to do, am I preaching, Mr. Anderson? He put us here on planet Earth to do something. Not to sit by and take notes. You learn if you've played any kind of a sport, especially a team sport, you learn more when you get in the game, all right? And you get your helmet kind of put on backwards after a hit. That's where you really learn from experience. And you know what? You're not going to win a lot of the times. As a matter of fact, I don't think you're going to win most of the time. And that's good because you learn more when you lose than when you win, and you can match all that up with the Bible, if you will. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, and I apologize for that, but it just absolutely amazes me that people are not bothered by what is going on. It doesn't make sense to me. All right, I'm done.
Well, tolerance, BJ. Tolerance went from, I love American history. It's one of the things that I go off about it like a little dork when somebody asks a question. You know, somebody asks one question before you know it, I'm talking about John Adams and all of his personal preferences in terms of religion and guns, and how most of our founding fathers, in today's terms, would be deplorable right-wingist people who cling to their Bibles and guns as much as the left would like us to think that our founding fathers were secularists. Where did they get that from? Most of them were Christians. And it went from tolerance. What they wanted tolerance to be was tolerance between the Jews and the Christians and within the Christian sects, because they didn't want America to turn into a bloody war place like Europe did between the different sects of Christianity. It was not tolerance in today's terms. Today's terms, tolerance is, I won't look at your sin if you won't look at mine. I'll ignore your sin if you ignore mine.
That's perfect.
That's tolerance today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just, again, Farah has a way of saying things. That's exactly what it is. People will ignore your sin, you ignore my sin, and it's all about me, and there's no higher authority, and if we can make a deal, it's like, let's make a deal. It is.
Man.
Let's make a deal, and I will ignore your sin, you ignore my sin. That's very, very well stated. I think that's the fundamental problem. I also think that you get in a habit of that, and there's just fewer and fewer people who are brave. I mean, who's brave enough to define good and evil and take the arrows that come back? And when the majority of people have backed into this notion of ignore my sin, I'll ignore your sin, we are in big trouble. And what that basically means is that eventually some powerful figure will have to come in and top down control everything, and that's really part of the goal. Part of the goal is intentionally to provoke this. Everything is normal. You can change your gender identity today if you're 6 years old, and tomorrow we will accept your gender identification if you change it again. Everything is okay. There are no absolutes, and part of that is to create utter chaos, which is destabilization, which is what people want. Why? Because then they will assume power, whether they are the top of the leftist elite or the top of the Islamic elite or the top of, unfortunately, the Vatican elite. They will obtain power. And if people die in the meantime, that's just too dang gone bad. So this whole notion of everything is normal, I'll accept your sin, you accept my sin, that's the fundamental worldwide problem.
But, Dick,
Yes.
Farah, we're supposed to be forgiving.
Of course. I can love you and forgive you. People ask me this all the time, BJ. I cling to my Bible and I cling to my guns very much so. And I have a fence around my house. I have a dog. I've taken every measure to make sure that people understand this is my family. This is my property. I love you as a Christian. I will pray for you. I hope you come to know the Lord Jesus, because that's work that I have to do. It's safer for me and my family if my neighbors are Christians. If the person coming onto my property truly has a relationship with Christ, it's an easier life for me. I can love you, and my pastor says this, I can love you and I can defend my family all at the same time. I can love you and want the best for you, and the minute you become a threat to my family, I will not think twice. To protect my family, I'll do whatever it takes, and maybe after I do it, I probably will kneel and I probably will pray for your soul. But don't think, God entrusted me with the life of my daughter, and this is why I fight harder, because it will be over my dead body that my daughter wears a hijab or goes to a school where she's told that we are brothers and sisters and we worship the same God. She will grow up knowing that her mama grew up as a slave and she became free, and she's willing to die for that freedom.
Farah,
If
Dick.
you're not willing to die for your principle, that's an opinion, not a principle.
Gotcha. Farah, Dick, we're going to have to take a quick break. We got a caller coming in. Hang in there. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Caller will be with you in about 30 seconds.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Okay, we're back. We got a very, very short time period. Caller, if you give us your first name and the state that you're calling from, and do you have a question or a comment? Go ahead, caller.
Well, kind of both.
Okay.
One, my name's Sherry, Michigan. And the reason why I was calling, I was listening to you talking about, people not wanting to get involved in things, right?
Right.
Well, here's the thing. What I'm finding when I talk to people about that people will say the strangest things to me. Like, one group of people, I mean, I'm grouping people. I know you guys don't like that, but in this particular case, I'm going to. And this was a Republican county thing, right? And the chair told me that, well, we don't have to worry about that. We have all the right people in charge. We have to trust our people in charge. I thought that was ludicrous. I mean, because honestly, when have we been able to trust the people we put in charge? That's why we have elections, to get rid of them again.
Yeah.
But the other part is when I talk to Christians, their response has been to me always the same thing. Well, we have to pray about it. Well, we have to pray about it. And so now I've been telling people, listen, I'm not trying to be crude. I'm not trying to be rude. But during the Holocaust, the Jewish people prayed, and that did not work well for them. That's why you hear Israel today say, it will not happen again. We will stand for ourselves. We will fight for ourselves. Correct?
Yep.
While they're praying, because I don't believe God wants us to just sit back and rely on anyone else, nor does he expect us just to pray to him and have him take care of everything. I think there's, it's supposed to work. We're supposed to work at a team with him,
Amen.
And also stand up for ourselves.
Sherry, great points. We're short on
that.
We're short on time. Thank you very much for the call, Dick, Farah. Any remarks, comments on that?
I agree. I agree completely. Here's the thing, and I've told my mom this. I told this to everybody. I even told this to one of my pastors. I love him to death. I said, there's nothing wrong with praying about it, but I don't need to pray about things that God already told me to do. When I see somebody who's hungry, I'm supposed to feed them. I'm not supposed to sit there and pray. What is God going to do? He already told me to feed them. God already told me to resist evil. He already told me to be bold in my faith. What, am I waiting for Gabriel to come and tell me something new? Like God changed his mind? He already told me. When I have to pray, because I already know I'm supposed to feed them, I'm supposed to pray, Lord, please provide for me so I can provide for those people that need help. Please give me time. Please give me effort. Please give me the wisdom and patience. Please make my aim mighty. This is what you pray for. You don't pray for God to give you a new revelation about something he already told you about.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah, BJ, I guess my only comment is I think, it's not my quote, but I've heard it, and it's very relevant. I think the tolerance of intolerance is cowardice. I think that's really relevant here. I also think that Christian pastors and GOP people, there's a lack of courage, there's a lack of bravery. There's an ability, well, if I identify with a group, and if I really don't have a relationship with God as an individual, I have kind of a liberation theology notion that if I associate with a group and we're all kind of nice to each other, we inherit each other's salvation through the group structure, as opposed to whether or not I'm going to be judged as an individual person who is educated. In my case, fortunately, by mother and father, who, if nothing else, would talk about right and wrong from day one, all the time. And I think that's gone, and I think a lot of people just don't have this notion of communicating good and evil to their children. I think a lot of people have pets instead of children, because you know what? You don't have to teach pets good and evil. You don't have to demonstrate behavior for pets. Pets are unconditionally loving you because you feed them. So I think we've lost this whole notion of individual responsibility, relationship with God. We will be judged, and I think that's left us. And I think when you listen to my comment for Sherry is that I think it's time to close the curtain on politicians. I don't have any expectation that a politician in my state or any other state is really going to make a difference. I think they're more in tune to the TV camera, to the media. They want to be on the Sunday morning talk shows, and nothing ever happens. It's institutional to let the problem exist so I can get back on television. I can introduce a new bill. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we didn't enforce the existing laws, but we're going to work together on a new law. You saw what happened in Michigan. There's a new law on FGM because there was one indictment of a federal case. These politicians have been going to Lansing for years. They know about FGM. They haven't had a law. They didn't want a law. Now all of a sudden they want to be on television. So we have a more powerful law than the federal law. Well, you know what? If it isn't enforced, it doesn't matter. So this whole notion of individual responsibility, or the society enforcing existing laws. All of that, to me, is what we have to go on, waiting for politicians to solve the problem, or even a Christian minister who can't deal with the reality of good and evil. That person is part of the problem, and the GOP and Democratic politicians are a part of the problem. It's individual people. I think Farrah said it beautifully. It's what do we do? What do we do with our time on earth? What do we do? How do we help good win and evil be defeated?
Dick,
right. When you have an immoral people, the Constitution and our simple original laws work. People say they don't work for today's day and age. Of course they work, but they were written for a moral people. And America has become immoral. And when you have an immoral people, you're constantly having to introduce new laws because you're trying to outsmart the evil that is innate within people who are trying to find different loopholes. They'll always find loopholes, so you're always going to have to add extra laws. Whereas if you have a moral people, then they're really simple laws. Don't hurt somebody else. It's as simple as that.
We the people, and I use sports analogies a lot. If you've got a coach and the players are losing every game, you don't keep that coach around very long, do you? Well, in America, we're becoming an amoral society. Now, who do you think is responsible for the morals in America? It isn't Donald Trump, and it isn't your local mayor, but it should be, your local pastors. And it doesn't look like they're doing their jobs. So if they were in that sports analogy, we'd fire them, right? But we're not firing them.
Even more so, the trainer, the father of the household.
Yeah, and I was going to get into that. But it's tough as a coach if your team has a leader that disagrees with your theories, with your plays. And that will destroy the game for the team as much as a bad coach. So it is twofold, and that's a great point, Mr. Anderson. The leaders, and in America, the old saying goes, as goes the family, so goes the church, and as goes the church, so goes the nation. We have a leadership problem in America. We got a moral problem, but we got a leadership problem in America. The men in the families, it was set up as a vertical range where the father is to take leadership and the rest of the family follows the leader. And that's kind of melted down to the point where it's a horizontal arrangement where the children, the ones that are out in the street, the anarchists, believe that they have as much authority as the leader of the family, which we really don't see. We've had it, look, Homer Simpson, Modern Family, what do you see? Fathers are made buffoons. We got to step up, folks. Men, we have to step up to the plate, and we got to start swinging the bat because it hasn't worked letting everybody else do it.
I'd like to address a little bit to Dick's venture with the police and remind Americans that our authority comes from the people, but we speak through our lesser magistrates. And if we encourage these, the police are magistrates that are there to enforce and enforce our laws that are already there on the books, and not to respond to illegal or unethical orders, but to stand the ground with what's written, the Constitution, which they had already sworn to uphold. And Matt Truella has some good information on that, in encouraging and building confidence in our magistrates.
Lesser magistrates, great point. Got about 2 minutes, Farrah. Dick, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I also more appreciate what you're doing and that you are in the battle. And I'm hoping somehow that somebody's encouraged by this show to do what you're doing, which is basically honoring God. You're honoring the truth. I don't do what I do because I think, well, it's going to buy me a place in heaven. I do what I do because it bothers me It's like fingernails on a chalkboard every day that I wake up, and I hear all this absolute insanity. I mean, the things that we're proposing are just, they make no sense whatsoever, and as a result, we're getting what we're getting. And I'm hoping again that Americans will wake up. Dick, Farah.
Well, BJ, I just want to say, if I could, that I think the comment that was just made by Mr. Anderson is really important. I think we have the last bastion, and those are people who have taken an oath to protect us. Those people have taken an oath for the Constitution, and I think those people are understand the morality required. So if anybody listening is a retired policeman or wants to take action and try to connect with Sharia Crime Stoppers, just please send an email to spearpoint911@gmail.com, and we can work together.
And Farah, you take care of that little daughter of yours. I envy you so much.
Thank you.
It's a great
I
time.
think that's my first time listening right now.
See, you're not letting her listen to this, are you? Oh, child abuse.
Oh, of course. Oh, yes, it is. She listens to this. She wakes up and listens to hymns. My daughter's future deplorable, a thorn in the side of leftists. If they think they've won the war, they still got something else coming.
And praise the Lord.
And we need to do everything we can to make sure that they can appreciate the world that they were born into in 10, 20, 30 years. If this lasts that long, because if we don't do something, if we don't stand up, first of all, who else is going to? Well, I'm sorry. The liberals already are. You see what's happening. The God haters already are, and you see what's happening.
They're taking a knee.
Yes, they are. They're taking a knee. That's true. Remember, American flag on the jerseys. Make them players wear that flag. I think it's a great solution to what's going on in America. Again, Dick and Farah, I very much appreciate you. I love both of you, and keep up the good work. And I'm sure we're going to talk with you guys soon. Any kind of updates, you know who to call. And if you need any show time for it, you just need to call. That's all there is to it. Again, thank you very much, both of you, and God bless you. Godspeed.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
God bless.
Well, that's it, folks. That's it for today's show. We're, 2 weeks into when the world ended? And for some reason, we're still here.
We're still here.
I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense. But we're still here.
I don't know if I'm glad about it or not.
There's a reason you're still here, Mr. Anderson. There's a lot of work to be done.
I know. I wake up every morning thinking about that.
Yep.
Praying about what my next step would be.
And callers, thank you. Very, very good callers. Great points. And we're in this together. So let's work together. Let's not be divided anymore. Let's find common ground. Righteousness is a nice common ground. We all know that there's certain items that everybody can accept that are wrong. And let's start there. And it won't be hard to find them because you're in America. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This has been your last call, WTVOradio.com.
Join us next week on WTVOradio.com for Last Call with B.J. Edwards.